Welcome back to the deep dive. Our mission here is to take all that industry analysis, the technical papers, the earnings reports you've shared with us, and really just distill it down to the core insights. And today, we are doing a critical deep dive into the AI landscape of 2025. If we had to boil the entire year down to one theme, it's this. We watched the industry make a huge transition. Our sources are calling it the move from the reasoning era.
Where models showed they could think.
Exactly, to the decisive action era. Or, put more simply, 2025 was the year AI stopped talking and started doing.
That phrase is, I think, a perfect summary. It just gets right to the point. Before 2025, everything was about the chat interface, right? We were all amazed that it could, recall facts or summarize a document. But 2025, that was the definitive shift to what we're calling agentic workflows.
Okay.
And these systems are fundamentally different. The model isn't just spitting out text. It's autonomously executing complex multi-step goals. It's chaining tools together without a human needing to click next every single time.
Okay, let's unpack that because agent is a word that gets thrown around a lot.
Right.
What is the fundamental technical difference that allowed these models to suddenly get this autonomy? And why did it all happen in 2025?
The change is really rooted in how the models approach a problem. Previously, the main way to get smarter was just scale.
More data, bigger model.
More data, more parameters, exactly. But that started to hit diminishing returns. What really enabled autonomy in 2025 was a breakthrough in models performing spontaneous, dynamic reasoning strategies.
Yeah.
The term you see everywhere is inference-time scaling.
Right, RLVR, we see that concept everywhere in the analysis. Relevance limited vector reasoning. For someone who isn't, deep in model architecture, what does that practically mean?
It means we move past raw model size as the only lever. Think of it like this. Old scaling was like giving a student a bigger and bigger library. Inference-time scaling, or RLVR, is about teaching that student really effective study habits. It's the ability to pause, to reflect, to self-correct, and strategically choose which tools to use, a calculator, a code interpreter, whatever, all during the task.
So it's not just what it knows, but how strategically it uses its time and resources to solve a new problem.
That's it. The focus shifted from stored knowledge to active reasoning.
And that technical shift immediately showed up in the market. The analysis points to the coding agents as the first undeniable killer app of this whole agentic era.
Absolutely. Killer app is the right word. Systems like Anthropic's Claude Code and OpenAI's updated Codex, they were just revolutionary. They were the market proof point that this autonomy was real.
Because they weren't just suggesting code.
No, not at all. You could give it a high-level command, something like integrate this feature, handle all the dependencies, and run the tests. And it would just go and do it.
Yeah.
Autonomously writing, debugging, executing. That's real execution.
Okay, but here's the huge challenge, especially for a big company. When you have an AI agent running loose like that, writing code, hitting databases, accessing internal APIs, the security risk, it just skyrockets.
Oh, absolutely. It had to have forced a rapid standardization of security.
It did, and that's where the foundation for secure enterprise adoption was really laid. The scaffolding that made all this possible was the industry-wide adoption of the Model Context Protocol, or MCP. MCP, okay, that's jargon we need to define.
Think of MCP as the digital passport and the security clearance system for every single agent. It standardized how these LLMs could securely connect to data, especially inside a corporate firewall.
So it's like a set of rules.
Exactly. It governs authentication, authorization, data masking. Without MCP, enterprises just wouldn't touch these agents. They couldn't guarantee data wouldn't leak or that the agent wouldn't, do something harmful. It enforces zero trust principles for the agent.
That makes perfect sense. So you have the ability to act, plus the protocols to act securely. That just opens the door for massive monetization.
Which brings us to the battlefield. The analysis says 2025 was just this massive three-way race for supremacy.
It was. And it was all fueled by this immense pressure for profitability, even with these staggering valuations. It wasn't just about who had the smartest model anymore. It was about who could build the most defensible economic moat.
So let's start with OpenAI. Their strategy seems to have been defend the frontier. It was defined by this massive bet on infrastructure.
Correct. Their big announcement was GPT-5 on August 7th. And they introduced this concept they called built-in thinking.
Which wasn't just marketing hype.
No, it signaled a real move towards expert-level reasoning across all modalities at once: text, code, vision, audio. The analysis said it was the first general model that could derive complex scientific hypotheses from raw data, a huge step beyond just retrieving facts. And that distinction is crucial. But their most public bet, the real headline grabber, was the Stargate project, an $850 billion project. I mean, that's an astronomical number.
It is. It was a very explicit bet on compute supremacy. OpenAI basically argued that the next generation of agents would need an exponentially bigger compute fabric than what even existed. Stargate was their attempt to build a moat so deep that no one else could physically compete on raw power.
But they couldn't just rely on the flagship model, right? The cost to run it must have been immense.
Exactly. So they also addressed costs by releasing the O304 mini-series. These were smaller models fine-tuned for high-speed, low-cost agentic tasks. And to go head-to-head with Anthropic's success in coding, they launched Codex Web in May.
So a two-pronged attack. Build the biggest moat at the top with GPT-5 and Stargate, but also attack the high-volume, low-cost market with the mini-series.
That's the perfect summary. Now let's pivot to Anthropic, the enterprise leader. They had a complete breakout year. They capitalized on OpenAI's focus on the frontier, which left this big opening for a trusted, governance-focused partner for businesses.
And the numbers are just staggering. By mid-2025, they had captured 40% of enterprise LM spend. That's up from 24% the year before. That is a huge shift.
It proves that raw capability isn't the only thing that matters. Trust, governance, reliability for mission-critical tasks. That's just as valuable. And their breakout product was Claude Code,
Which the source notes hit a $1 billion run rate within months. That kind of speed just validates their entire enterprise focus.
It does. And their key feature, their big innovation, was deploying asynchronous agents. This enabled what people started calling the prompt and forget workflow, meaning you could give the agent a really complex task, and it would just work in the background for hours, maybe even days, and only ping you when the job was done.
Yeah.
For a developer, that meant you could tell it to create a pull request, run the integration tests, and merge the code without having to babysit it.
But let me push back on that for a second. Is that 40% enterprise share a real long-term win? Or is it just temporary? If OpenAI uses Stargate to just leapfrog Anthropic on capability, couldn't those customers just jump ship?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? It's about stickiness. Anthropic's bet is that enterprise infrastructure, the governance, the compliance layers, the vendor lock-in around secure protocols, that all outweighs a marginal increase in raw intelligence. They design their tools to be trusted first.
So trust is more valuable than smarts in certain industries.
For regulated, high-stakes industries, the market is saying yes.
A compelling argument. Okay, finally, we have Google. Vertical integration and ecosystem scale. They came at this using their colossal existing footprint.
Google's play was pure ecosystem stickiness. They already own the OS for so many of us through Workspace and Android. Their goal was to make Gemini the invisible default choice by baking it into everything.
Right, they didn't need to be the absolute best, just good enough and everywhere.
Exactly. And they had two key releases. Gemini 2.5 Pro in March showed some really impressive leaps, especially in math and science benchmarks. But maybe more important strategically was Gemini 3 Flash in December. That model set new standards for speed and intelligence per dollar. It was a clear signal that Google was focused on making AI fast, cheap, and accessible for everyone in their ecosystem.
And for the consumer, they put the agent capability right where we live.
That's it. The full integration of AI mode right into Google Search meant that deep autonomous research was just there for billions of users. The analysis sort of suggests that while OpenAI was chasing the bleeding edge,
And Anthropic was chasing the secure enterprise wallet.
right, Google just quietly made sure that for most people, the most convenient agent was the one that was already there, in your phone, in your email.
So we have these massive strategic bets. But let's zoom out to the balance sheet. The source paints a picture of just intense financial pressure. What did that look like in 2025?
It was a year of reckoning. I mean, the numbers are hard to even grasp. OpenAI's valuation hit $300 billion, but the total industry CapEx spend across all the major players was over $400 billion.
$400 billion, and that's not software, that's infrastructure, land, data centers, energy.
Absolutely. And that's where the vibe check from capital markets got really brutal. Investors stopped caring about hype. They shifted entirely to demanding clear unit economics and sustainable revenue. They wanted proof the spending would actually lead to profits.
And the analysis points out the absurdity of OpenAI's numbers. They hit an incredible $13 billion in revenue, but reported over $12 billion in quarterly losses.
Which means their operating expenses were nearly double their revenue. The revenue shows people want the product, but the loss shows the unsustainable cost of the model, the cost to run the data centers, the energy for Stargate. The big question became, are you building a moat Or are you building an infrastructure bubble?
And on top of all that financial pressure, they had intense competition from global players, from open weight models, all driving the cost of intelligence down.
Yeah, what's fascinating there is how quickly that capability gap closed. Open-weight models like DeepSeek R1 and Alibaba's Qwen 3, they started showing frontier-level reasoning in key benchmarks. They proved you didn't need an $850 billion data center to get top-tier intelligence.
Which forced the big guys to slash prices.
They had to. They had to slash API pricing just to stay competitive on cost.
Yeah.
The core intelligence, the ability to answer a question, that started becoming a commodity.
And that transition is the single most important takeaway. Okay, let's bring this all back to the listener's workplace. What did this action era actually mean for organizations and for professionals?
Well, the adoption rate tells the story. We saw an 87% implementation rate of AI tools across organizations. The average annual investment was $6.5 million. This is not experimentation anymore.
No.
The whole strategy shifted from, AI experimentation, letting a few teams play with a chatbot, to full-scale AI-driven process redesign. Companies are rebuilding workflows, assuming autonomous agents are going to handle a lot of routine, multi-step work.
But redesigning core processes is incredibly risky. What were the biggest roadblocks they hit?
The challenges were more strategic than technical. The big one was ROI measurement. How do you actually quantify the productivity gain of an agent writing code versus a person? It's really hard. The second, predictably, was data privacy. Even with things like MCP, trusting a sophisticated agent with your company's crown jewels is still a major hurdle.
And we have to talk about the human factor. The sources noted that 46% of professionals expressed real job security concerns. That's a huge psychological headwind.
It is, and it's natural, because the role of the professional was fundamentally altered, especially in software engineering. The analysis is pretty clear. Developers are not being eliminated, they're being repurposed. They're shifting from being a doer, writing every line of code,
To being a system architect and reviewer.
Exactly. Your job becomes managing a fleet of these autonomous agents, making sure the overall architecture is sound, and critically, reviewing their output for quality and security. Success isn't about how much code you write anymore.
It's about how well you orchestrate the agents.
Precisely. And that transforms the whole skill set. For consultants, for leaders, the most valuable skill stopped being technical integration and became effective change management, helping your organization get ready for a world where you command autonomous systems rather than just execute tasks yourself.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? 2025 was the year of action, marked by agentic execution. We saw OpenAI bit the farm on compute, Anthropic win big with enterprise trust, and Google leverage its massive ecosystem. And all of this happened under the intense glare of capital markets demanding profit.
The strategic takeaway is clear. For enterprises, you have to move beyond pilots. It's about prioritizing data readiness and secure, MCP-compliant architectures to enable these autonomous workflows.
Yeah.
And for professionals, the skill to master is the orchestration of multiple specialized agents. You need to be the architect, not the bricklayer.
Which brings us to a final, provocative thought. Building on this idea that core intelligence is rapidly becoming a commodity. If the base capabilities of these models are getting cheaper and they're available everywhere, how long can infrastructure and ecosystem lock in Google's Android moat, OpenAI's Stargate? How long can that really hold the market? And if intelligence is cheap, what's the niche, specialized skill encoded into a bespoke agent that will define the next billion-dollar application? Something for you to chew on as you navigate the action era. We'll see you on the next deep dive.